If you're a regular listener of the show, you might remember several episodes ago, I did an analysis on the handicap games on OGS with an immense amount of data. And I had a listener write in about why the black win rate percentage might be so low. I got like 42% black win rate percentage at zero handicap, and the black win rate percentage didn't change too much as the handicaps grew either. Well, taking all that into account, I essentially cleaned up the data a bit and did a little more analysis. And essentially what I did was I made sure that the handicaps matched the rank difference. And OGS does this by subtracting the ranks between players and finding the difference and rounding down. And then once that number is found, that's the number of handicap they get. So by filtering out those numbers, what I get is basically only handicap games where the handicap matches the actual rank difference. And we're excluding all those games where people got more or less handicap games than they were supposed to, because it doesn't exclude custom games, right? So after that, there was a huge drop in the number of games that could be analyzed. So it looks like for the non-handicap games, previously I was looking through like 17 million games or so, and that dropped to like 10,000 games. So making sure that the rank difference matched really cut down on the amount of data that I was going to actually be able to use. And once I did that, the win percentage for black was a lot more normal. The win percentage for zero handicap was 48.29% for black. And that's totally normal. And for the increasing handicaps, we get a lower win rate for black. So for example, one handicap, black's win rate is about 45%. Then two is about 42%. Three handicap, it goes back up, up and down a little to 47%. But eventually it goes up to like 8 handicap is like 39% win percentage for black. And of course, the more handicap we get to, the less games I have for analysis. But there is a bit of a trend where the more handicap games you get, the more handicap you get in the game, the less likely it is for black to win. We can speculate a little on that, but so far I don't really have anything that I can extract from that data other than the fact that this is something that I noticed. But just maybe thought you might want to know about this little data analysis update. And welcome to Starpoint, the show about Go for Go fans away from the board. And our topic today is books. There are so many books out there. I'm a Go book addict. I buy way too many Go books. I love buying, and it's not just with Go, but it's especially with Go. So I am someone who likes to go out and buy a lot of books, and I oftentimes don't get a chance to read them because I don't know. There's something about books that are just really nice to have. But especially with Go books, it's like I want all the Go books that exist. So I do have a nice little pile of Go books. So I wanted to kind of go through all of the books and give you quick 2 cents on each of them, on what I think about them. But before I do that, I want to just throw out the question, do books make you stronger at Go? Are books actually helpful in improving your Go game? Because, well, as much as you'd want this to be the case, just because you read a Go book, a good Go book even, doesn't mean you get any stone stronger. And so is it worth spending any time looking at these books and reading them and trying to learn from them? And I think the short answer is no. They will usually not make you much stronger, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't read these books. Look, I mean, there's like way better time to be spent in terms of if you strictly want to improve playing games, reviewing them, doing Sumego problems and things like that will always yield more results. And I think that those things will be generally more effective at improving your game. But in terms of books, they absolutely can help you get stronger. And I think there's 2 points I want to make. One is that it really depends on how you are using these books. If you just sit and read through these books and expect that knowledge to just sink in right away, and then when you go out and play your next game, you'll be able to like just start winning and fixing all your mistakes, that is absolutely not true. Go knowledge is different from a lot of knowledge that typically comes from books. Sometimes when you read a book, you might read something and you'll know that piece of knowledge for life. And with Go, a lot of things won't stick for a really, really long time. And in that sense, maybe books are good for helping you with that knowledge, because reading something and then seeing things about the game elsewhere will help drive that knowledge into your head and make some concepts stick. But with the books, I think the best way you can really get the most out of books is to look at very small segments of books and try to drill those into your head as much as you can by reading them over again, playing out the variations again, doing the problem again and again and again and again. I forgot what the second thing was about the books. Oh, okay, I remember now. The second thing was, if you read books, that will increase your overall cultural knowledge of Go. And when I say cultural, I don't just mean like literally like cultural, but I mean like even in gameplay, fundamental principle kind of culture. So if you isolate yourself from the world of Go and you focus only on doing problems and playing games, you are lacking a lot of wisdom from the outside world of Go that is common knowledge to many people, right? If you have someone who is like that and they're isolated, maybe they just don't know very commonly known principles like you should play either the 3-4 point or the 4 point as your opening move, as those two are the standard moves for opening. Of course, you can do other things. Of course, you're going to see other things. If you play people enough, they will play 3-3s, they will play 5-4s, they will play Tengen. But if you are immersed enough in the culture of Go, you at some point understand, oh, the standard moves are 4-4 and 3-4 as opening moves, which is not restrictive, but it is good to know what people consider the standard. And this goes on for later on concepts as well, things like how and when to jump, how to make a base, and the things that just kind of you can learn on your own, but at the same time, it's a lot easier if you just kind of obtain the knowledge from outside sources, and books are a great way to kind of be exposed to more experts talking about Go and just kind of understand what the kind of general mentality is when people think about how to play Go. So in short, books, no, I don't think they really make you stronger in a very, very noticeable way, but that doesn't mean they're not good, and they can help you improve. I think it is important to crack open a book every now and then. I think it's something that I've kind of said about when to review your games about a stronger player, that it's not important to get every single game reviewed by a stronger player. Of course, it's going to benefit you, but it is very important to check in with a stronger player every now and then just to keep you on track. And I think that's the same for books. So without further ado, I want to get right into my list of books. First one, aptly going to be the first book that I talk about, is the legendary Lessons in the Fundamentals of Go. This iconic yellow book by Toshiro Kageyama might be one of the most recommended books in the Go world. But I have to ask why. This book is commonly recommended for beginners, but it is, and I think a lot of people have started to say this, not a beginner book. It's not a good book for beginners. It's very some of this stuff is very advanced. I still don't understand a lot of this stuff. The thing is that this book is very well written. The voice, the tone of the words in this book is so entertaining. There's some anecdotes about Mr. Kageyama's experience in the world of Go, and he's just got such a radiant personality that leaps off the page. It's hard not to love this book when you read it. But again, this is not a good book for beginners. I would hardly even call it a fundamentals book, even. Although it does cover a lot of fundamentals, it covers a lot of them in a very advanced way that are oftentimes pretty difficult to understand or digest. I highly recommend this book for someone who wants to read for entertainment purposes, and also kind of learn stuff on the way. But I read this book as a DDK player, and I think I learned something from the book, but not a whole lot. One thing that I did learn from the book is how to read ladders, or trying to discipline myself in how to read ladders. That's the first thing they talk about. But yeah, I have mixed feelings about this book. It's a very beautiful book about Go, and it's almost like I want to call it a must read, but it's not. It's just, it has a lot of good knowledge, but you do need to spend a lot of time to absorb the knowledge in the book. It's not simple stuff. So if you're looking for a first book, not the way to go. If you've gone through a lot of books already and you're looking for another book, yeah, give it a shot. This one does have a lot of great information in it, but it is different, it's difficult, and some of the information is a bit outdated. It was written in, I think, at least it was translated in 1979. Not sure exactly when it was written, but it's an older book. So some of the advancements in AI have revealed some of the stuff in there to be wrong, but I don't think we need to be too wary of that. But again, mixed feelings about this book. I don't know if this is the best book to be recommending to beginners at all. But it is a good book. I love the entertainment value of it, and yeah, that's all I have to say about that one. The book that I would recommend in place of it, that is something that I found by the recommendation of Triton and Contraband Go, the YouTube creators, is The Fundamental Principles of Go by Yilun Yang. This book is also, I would say, not a complete beginner book, but it is a very structured and concise way to explain the basics of what you should be doing on a regular 19x19 game. And so I wouldn't recommend this to a complete beginner, but if you're lost in what you're supposed to be doing in the game, this is a great starter. It has a lot of information. It has a lot of quizzes, and it's got this really clean outline of listed principles. Though, again, Go is never going to be easy. Nothing in Go is ever going to be super easy, but this is a good one. And I think there's a lot of value in going through this book multiple times. Yilun Yang has also has a little bit of mini volumes after this called the workshop lectures that I have the volume 1 of it, but it's similar stuff to the stuff found in the Fundamental Principles of Go. So if you want more of that stuff, there's more material there in the workshop lectures. But yes, this is a great book, and I think it's developed, the Fundamental Principles of Go, that is. It was developed by Yilun Yang after trying to teach in America and realizing that in order to transfer the knowledge, he should have this set of principles. You would think that, in Asia, they would already have this set of principles, but I think that sometimes certain things are so embedded in the culture that they never thought to organize the information in a way where you could transfer it to other people. Kind of like how when you speak a native language and you don't know the grammar as well as someone who has studied the language and yet speaks worse than you, might be something like that. But this book also features quizzes at the end of the book, or not the book, but each chapter, so you kind of can test your knowledge as well. It's great. It's a good book. I'll probably go over it again at some point, and it's very good for fundamentals. Now, if you want something that's more for absolute beginners, I might recommend this book called Go, More Than a Game by Peter Shotwell. This one is definitely a contender for one of the top books to recommend a beginner, a complete beginner, because it starts with the capture rule. It tells you how the capture rule works. So all you people out there trying to learn this game and struggling, maybe this is a good resource because it has some examples on what should be done, what shouldn't be done in terms of the very absolute fundamentals in the game. Though that said, it's not just for beginners. It also has some intermediate level concepts, and it kind of progresses throughout the book. So as you get stronger, you can keep referring to this book. This is more of a large format book. It's by Peter Shotwell again, and it not only includes that stuff, it also includes this like cultural and historical knowledge about the origins of Go, the myths around Go, and what Go really means to people. It's kind of like an all-in-one kind of book. I would highly recommend for absolute beginners to intermediate players alike. And I want to mention this next book called Winning Go. I have mentioned it before in a podcast episode by Richard Bozulich and also with Peter Shotwell. I haven't really gone through this one as much, but it does seem like a fundamentals-oriented book. If I end up going through it some more, I will let you know how this book feels to me, though it does feel a lot more problem-focused than Go More Than a Game. So Go More Than a Game will have more of like a lecture feel, but this one is more kind of like a problem-focused fundamentals book. And then another book that I haven't, read as much is Hun-heon's Lectures on Go Techniques. And you can really see by me kind of just casually saying I haven't read this one as much what kind of Go book problem I have, because I keep buying Go books and I don't have time, or, I don't read through enough of them. But this is another one that I think it's really great for those fundamentals, right? If you want to know why you should Hane at the head of two stones, this book will kind of illustrate some of that and just kind of go through fundamental Go play, right? What you should be really doing as a proper move. And I think that's kind of the idea behind this book. And of course, Hun-heyon is a legendary professional, the one who kind of led the way for the Korean Go world. And another book recommendation that I have for absolute beginners or beginner intermediates is the Janice Kim series. Any books by Janice Kim? Those books, I haven't gone through all of them, but I did read the one, I think, on attack and defense. As a beginner, when I was a double-digit Q, honestly, the best book, I think, for that level for me, because it was just actually something that I felt like I could understand. So the Janice Kim series, I'm just going to say it's probably all great stuff. Next up is the Attack and Defense book by Akira, Ishida, 9dan, and James Davies. So this one is the part of the Elementary Go series, Volume 5, Attack and Defense. And this one I'm going to say is like maybe the best second book to get. After you understand a lot of the basics, you've done some Semego, you have moved into the 19 by 19 game, and you're kind of trying to start to play. This is, I think, a great book. It really teaches you why we play defense moves, why we play attack moves, and how we should approach attacking strategies and defense, and what the proper way to go about these things are. And it's pretty dense. It's got like a lot of examples, but it's not reading intensive in terms of, well, I mean, it's a book, you have to read it, but it's not like there's a lot of reading problems in it. It's more judgment problems. And sometimes they will go over some sequences, as you have to. As a Go book, you're going to have to do that eventually. But this is just a great book to really understand how the stones are interacting with each other across an entire 19 by 19 board. And I really highly recommend this one. It's honestly, best second book on Go that you should get as soon as you start reaching kind of the single digit Q level. I think that's a good level for that one. Another book that I have in the Elementary Go series, this is volume 3, is called Tesuji. It's also by James Davies. This book is a crazy book because it has just so many reading problems in it. I am little more than halfway through the book. I've had this book for years, and I'm just trying to get through all the problems, and it's a lot of work. So if you like to put work into your Go studies, this is a good book to have. It's great for expanding your Tesuji vocabulary. And if you don't know what a Tesuji is, that's just it's literally kind of translated into clever play. But if you can kind of think of it as moves that can accomplish your goals that kind of look like very clever and genius moves, things that just don't really look like they would have worked. That's not the first thing that you have maybe tried, but kind of like special moves almost. But these are definitely handy to know. Tells you all about how you can connect your groups, how you can split across groups, how you can kill things. It really emphasizes reading training, and it's got some really, really tricky stuff in there, but it also has some fundamental stuff, and you really should know a lot of this stuff. Like if you don't know what a nose Tesuji is, for example, or the tombstone squeeze, or 1,000-year code, you name it. Like there's all these things, these concepts that Go players should know about, and this is a great little dictionary of those things and explanation of all these amazing Go concepts that you can add to your arsenal of weapons when you're playing Go. But it is a more of an advanced book. It requires some heavier reading, and I would recommend it to someone who has advanced in their game enough that you want to start getting into more advanced concepts. You want to start reading a little more, and like reading in terms of the game more. And then I recommend that book. That's a high recommendation for me as well. Another book that I haven't had a chance to really get through is Get Strong at the Endgame by Richard Bozulich. This one is part of the Get Strong at Go series, volume 7. And this book, I couldn't get through because in the beginning there's a diagnostics test. They give you a bunch of endgame problems, but endgame is different from things like Tesuji because it's a whole board problem. They give you 9x9s, and you have to kind of see where all the endgame moves are and decide what order to play them all in. And it's really hard to remember and keep track of, so you have to somehow write it down. Now, I don't really feel like I want to write stuff in the book directly, so I tried to find a way to take the quiz in the beginning some other way on an external notepad or something, but it was hard. But I will return to it, and I'm going to try maybe setting up like a SGF file with the branches all set up for each of the problems and kind of record each problem on the SGF file. But just keep that in mind if you're going to buy this book. It's a good book, I think. I can't really say, I haven't gotten through it, but if you're going to try to get stronger at Endgame, probably a good book to have. And next up, we have All About Life and Death by Chikun, and this one comes in 2 volumes. It's basically, I was trying to look for Chikun's Encyclopedia of Life and Death, but I couldn't find a copy in English online to buy. So I ended up getting this one called All About Life and Death by Chikun. And it's not quite the same as the Life and Death Dictionary or Encyclopedia, but it does cover fundamental shapes in the corner and how those shapes live or die, and it just kind of explains very, very clear explanations of each of the moves involved in all these shapes, and it's just kind of like a dictionary. And if you look at the beginning, there's like a table of contents, and the table of contents is literally just a whole bunch of images of shapes and the page number where you can find it at. So if you ever have a game and you're like, oh, what goes on with this shape? I think this shape might be something that's covered in this book. You can go in the beginning of the book and look through all the shapes and see if you can find your shape. There's categories for them, like 6 space shapes, eye shapes in the corner, 8 space eye groups in the corner, life and death on the second line. And you can use this book as a reference. It's honestly the best reference book that I have. I find myself going through it to find certain things to see if I can learn from it. And it's good. It's a good book to kind of skip through. And even Chikun in the preface says, "It is my fondest wish for you to keep this at your bedside table and fall asleep reading a variation or two." So it's really designed not for you to just kind of go through from front to back, but to just have as a reference and just learn from it when you can, and what in terms of things that interest you. So it's a good one to have for that purpose. And then we have a book by a content creator, fellow content creator, Dwyrin, called How to Open. This book was released in the past year, and it's a book about the opening. I believe I finished this book, but I have to say that it's if you like Dwyrin's content and you like his style of humor and you like his personality, I recommend this book to you, because the writing style is very much as if you're watching one of his streams or videos. He talks exactly the same way. He has not really changed his personality for this book. It's got all the jokes that he would make normally going through this stuff. And you've got diagrams of exactly like how to open and what kind of knowledge that he has on the opening. But I do have to say it is kind of sparse in terms of the content. The spacing of the lines, it's like double spaced. So there's a lot of white space, and there's kind of a go diagram every like other page or so, and it's around 160 pages. So it's kind of a general overview on general advice on how to open. Some rules of thumbs, covers like shoulder hits, caps, things like that. But it's very much a Dwyrin book. So if you're a Dwyrin fan, I recommend the book. I would say there's maybe better opening books out there to get than this one. But I enjoyed it nonetheless. And another book, and the final book that I'm going to go over, at least for the improvement series, is a very thin book called How Not to Play Go by Yuan Zhou. This book is essentially just, well, it's 30 pages, very, very short. But in comparison to Dwyrin's book, it's like 3 diagrams per page, and the writing is a lot more dense. So it's almost like the same amount of content. And this is essentially just 3 game reviews: one between an 8Q game, one between one in a 4Q game, and then the last one being between a 1Q and a 2Q. And it's a different approach because it's trying to illustrate this is what you shouldn't do. And I think that's a very effective approach, because oftentimes when we consume Go content for the purpose of improving, the teacher will have to at some point say, this is the way you should play, and then they move on to the next concept. But a lot of the Q players' mentality is, well, why not this way? Why not that way? Why can't you play here? Why can't you play there? And this book really focuses on why can't you play there? Why you shouldn't play those moves? And so I think it's a good way to teach. I think maybe something that more teachers should adopt is going off, like giving examples of why you shouldn't play certain moves. And I think that's a good way to look at it. And I really enjoy this one because it's literally just going through certain games and following along and trying to see the problems with the way these level of players are playing. And the fact that it's going from an 8Q to a 4Q to a 1Q game is, I think, something that I think is a great teaching method to see how the game quality changes as players improve. So that's my fat stack of books that I have, and I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do about this Go book addiction. I'm trying to hold back every time I see a new Go book that I want to get. But eventually, I'm going to probably succumb, which is not the worst thing. But the important thing is to spend more time with your Go books, I think, is the thing I'll leave you with here for now, is that when you have a book, you can't expect the book to do all the heavy lifting. You have to take the time to understand all the wisdom on the pages, and one page could take like a month to understand, depending on the concept. And it is also important to get books that are good for your level. I just wanted to make an additional comment about Lessons in the Fundamentals of Go by Kageyama. At one point in the book, there's a problem, and he writes, if you're a Dan player, you should be able to see the solution within seconds, and if you can't solve it at all, then there's no hope for you of becoming better. And I just want to let you know that if you're one of the people who have read this book and came across that and also found themselves struggling with that problem, you're not alone, and don't worry. Kageyama is very colorful in his language, let's say, and you definitely have hope. As when I first tried that problem, it was very difficult. I had no idea what to do, but now when I look at it, I see why he considers it maybe a little on the easy side. But it's hard for someone who's at his level to understand how slowly someone may improve starting from scratch as a beginner. So I just wanted to give that slight word of encouragement there. I want to mention two more books, and these books are not instructional books. They're novels, pretty much. The first one I've talked about in an earlier episode of Starpoint, called The Master of Go. This one is by Yasunari Kawabata, and it's a semi-historical book. It's an account of Honinbo Shusai's last game against Kitani Minoru. And it's a historical game because you can look up the game record and it's there. Sure enough, it's there. But there are some slight details that had been altered. For example, Kitani Minoru's name is not Kitani Minoru in the book. It's something Otake. I forgot. It's been a while since I read the book. But some details have been changed. I don't know why. But maybe just for kind of some kind of creative reason, some details have been changed. But it's become one of my favorite books of all time, even outside of the Go world. And and before you go out and rush to buy it, it's not for everyone. It's not a traditional story where there is like a beginning, middle, end, and there's like a climax. And it's a very different style of literature, and I really liked how it talked about the plain happenings around a Go game. It's told from the point of view of the person recording the game for these two masters, and just noting down all the details, almost like excruciating details, of when Honinbo Shusai grimaced, or when they both got up for break and had lunch, and what they had for lunch, how they went to the bathroom and came back, how this one particular move took 20 minutes, this one particular move took 5 minutes. And like, there's just a lot of detail, and it really made me feel like it illustrates life accurately, and it really makes you feel like you're there. And life isn't a dramatic story like you see in Hollywood or in most fiction books. It's not like a huge up and down dramatic happening. Oftentimes life is just boring, and it's just, well, maybe not boring, maybe boring is the wrong word. Not much is happening, but it's still interesting because you're still experiencing something. And that's kind of the feeling that I got from the book. If you are a patient reader, if you're not frustrated by a lack of action in a book, and you like the idea of reading a book that just feels like a lot of stillness to it, and a lot of just kind of flat, detail about the little subtleties of what's going on and trying to feel really the atmosphere of the room at the time, then this is a good book for you. Again, not for everyone, but I found it to be very lifelike, and it really has become one of my favorite books of all time. And it's a book that my girlfriend got me one day. The other book that I wanted to mention is one that I have not read yet. I will try to report back to it when I get around to reading it, but this one is called The Girl Who Played Go by Shan. And I was very intrigued by this story because well, first of all, it centers around Go, which is always a plus. But it's about a girl who plays Go in 1930s Manchuria, where there was a Japanese invasion. And it's a bit of a Romeo and Juliet story between the girl and a Japanese soldier. So I don't know much about it, but from the few words that I've read, it also has a very good poetic feel to it. And Go is a poetic game. So those are the two other books that I wanted to mention. And that's going to do it for the books in this episode. We'll move on to an experimental section of the show that I kind of tried to start last week. We'll see if this sticks around, but welcome to the DDK Advice Corner. This is the part of the show where I review a DDK game and think of some general advice to give or tips to help improve your game. One day, hopefully, I become strong enough that I can make it a SDK corner or just an overall Q level corner. But as of yet, I'm still an SDK, and I need to get stronger before I do that. And I strongly believe that you should be pretty, many stones stronger than someone before you start giving them advice. So the advice today that I got from reviewing a random DDK game is to surround when you can surround. What happened in the game was someone played out a sequence and they nearly killed the group in the corner or something. And they took out like a vital point, and there was just one little spot that needed to be haned over before that group was entirely surrounded. The advice is that whether that group lives or not, it's highly valuable to play that move to completely seal that group off from the rest of the board. Whether it lives or not, right? First of all, sealing it off will increase chances of killing it by a lot. But even if you don't kill it, that group, that living group, has a lot more power and influence over the board if it has one little arm sticking out of it than if it has nothing sticking out. It can't do anything anymore. There's no more value to be gained from that group. So don't tanuki away from that for no good reason. Sometimes, you may want to tanuki away from that. There are possible situations where there are more valuable moves, but don't do it for nothing, right? It's a very valuable move. It's usually very valuable if you can get a last stone in to surround completely a group and seal it off from the rest of the world. The mistake that we make is trying to surround a group when it clearly takes more than one move. And you spend too many moves trying to surround the group, and you see that it's leaking and peeking out of everywhere, and you just start wasting a lot of stones. So the advice is, yes, if it's one less stone to surround the group, play it. It's probably really good. So that's the DDK Advice Corner. Very, very short segment. If you want to submit a game, maybe I can look at it, and if I'm strong enough to give you advice on it, then yeah, maybe that'll help inspire some more advice in the DDK Advice Corner. So with that, we'll go on to Go News, and we are out of some of the other tournaments, the Nongshim and the Samsung, but now we're in the 28th LG Cup. And the 28th LG Cup has been going on, and it's just resumed in the quarterfinal stage. And the matchups for the quarterfinals are Shinjin-seo versus Gu Zihao, Byun-sang-il. Well, let me try to name the countries. So Shinjin-seo, obviously Shinjin-seo from Korea, Gu Zihao from China, Byun-sang-il from Korea, Wang Jinghao from China, An Sung-jun from Korea versus Mi Yu-ting from China, and Han Sung-ju from Korea versus Ko Je from China. And by the time you listen to this, they've already done the thing, but you'll have to wait until next week or go ahead and look up the results yourself. The prize for first place is 300 million won, which is equivalent to about 227,000 US dollars. The runner-up prize is about a third of that with 100 million won, which is equivalent to about 75,000 US dollars. Again, this is the 28th LG Cup, and the time control for this is 3 hours main time plus 5 periods of 40 seconds byoyomi for each player. I haven't played a game at that time control at all. I think the longest I've ever gotten for main time was 45 minutes. And honestly, the more I play the long format games, the more I can understand spending even more time, because 45 minutes kind of whizzed by when I played. But I also have a question that maybe someone can answer. Why are so many of the world tournaments scheduled like this, where they play a couple days for a certain round and then they wait like a month before they play the next round? Does anyone have the answer to that? It doesn't seem very exciting. It kind of kills the momentum. Like, for example, we're waiting on the next round for the Nongshim Cup right now. So what's the deal with that? In other news, International Amateur Pair Go Championship. That is a Pair Go championship among amateurs only. And before I cover this, I'll just do a brief explanation of what Pair Go is. If you have not played it, if you're unfamiliar, Pair Go is a 2v2 format of Go. So you have a partner that you play Go with, and each team gets a single color, and you alternate moves between your partner. So it'll be your turn, then your opponent's first person's turn, then your partner's turn, then your opponent's second person's turn. And Pair Go is specifically a co-ed Go tournament. So Pair Go is specifically for couples with a man and a woman on each team. And the gender-neutral version of Pair Go would be called Ren Go. Okay, so that's Pair Go. Oh, obviously, so the very, very important little caveat here, you can't talk to your partner during the game. You can't communicate with them, and otherwise it would just be the stronger player in each team 1v1, right? So Pair Go is a silent game, and it's between two teams of two. So the International Amateur Pair Go Championship, has passed, and the results are in. First place was China's team of Chen Shi and Wang Chen, and it's again more evidence of it being China's year this year. China hasn't won this amateur championship since 2006, as far as I've seen. And nearly all Korean wins for this International Amateur Pair Go Championship. And so China had a moment here, even in the amateur world. Of course, also in the Pair Go Championship, we have the major Asian countries and participants, but we also have a pretty good turnout from the Europeans, with teams from Czechia, Germany, United Kingdom, Poland, Israel. Well, Israel's not Europe, but more Western, I guess, and Spain participating as well. And the best European pair was Lucas Podpera and Adriana Tomsu of Czechia, who took 14th place, followed right behind by Germany, who Manja Mars and Johan. I'm so sorry. Go names are the worst for pronunciation. Anyway, Johannes Obenaus of Germany finished 15th right behind Czechia, and they were the European Pair Go champions. So it's a pretty cool event. It's my first time learning of it, actually. But if I really enjoy forms of Go, like these kind of variants of Go that are still Go, but has like a little twist to it. And I think it's a fun little tournament. And finally, we have the North American Ink Cup being held at the San Francisco Go Club upcoming, which is really exciting to have our own version of the Ink Cup. Although the prize pool is definitely a lot smaller. It's over $2,000, so still a pretty big prize pool by our standards. And affiliated with this Ink Cup is Juju Jang 9P and Rui Nai Wei of 9P. And if you haven't heard of Rui Nai Wei, she is pretty much the best female Go player of all time, only to be recently challenged by Che Zhang. She's a Chinese woman professional, and I think from what I've read, they're going to be at this tournament. So and it's still up for registration. So if you're interested and you're going to be in the San Francisco area, go to sfgo.club and you can go and enter. I think there was like a $50 sign-up fee or something like that. And this tournament is sponsored by the Inks Foundation and Yellow Mountain Imports. Yellow Mountain Imports being a very basically the biggest Western Go equipment distributor. But yes, that's all exciting news. Looks like there's plenty of interesting tournaments going on nowadays. And with that, it's time for listener mail. Ellie writes, "Hello, I discovered your podcast on the Pocket Casts app a few days ago and can't stop listening. Thank you for doing what you're doing and keep it up." Well, thank you so much for writing in and thank you for listening. It's great to hear that you can't stop. And I've never heard of Pocket Casts, but my RSS feed is going out to multiple platforms, so it's cool to see that there's other outlets that are getting listeners for the podcast, and you're very welcome. Continuing on, I am a beginner at Padauk and trying to find all the resources I can to improve and learn. It is very challenging finding people to play with in person and have been unsuccessful thus far. Hearing you talk about your learning experiences and advice is helping me a lot. Your passion for the game is contagious and gets me more excited about Padauk. Love from Canada. All the best, Ellie. Well, thank you so much for writing in, Ellie. It's, yes, sometimes very challenging to find people to play with in person. Look around and see if there's any clubs available. If not, maybe one day you can start your own club. And it's cool to hear that my passion for the game is contagious. It's great to see that, that's bleeding through a little bit. And that's just awesome. So hello back to a fellow Canadian. I mean, I live in California now, but I grew up in Toronto. Another Canadian has written in, a well-known one by the name of Ben Kyo, has written a great comment about our reading episode from a couple episodes back. Ben Kyo writes, "Excellent points. Really liked this. I often discuss the topic of reading ahead deeply and at length like you did on stream, for example, so I'm happy to see someone else bringing up the subject and tackling a lot of the key aspects and sharing great advice. This topic is important, yet hardly gets any love. I couldn't agree more on the thing about moves earlier on in the reading getting fuzzy or forgotten and to just rinse and repeat. People think it's just them or just Q players, but no, it's everyone, even those who can read tens of moves deep. Yes, it's like, I think maybe sometimes we underestimate ourselves and we look at a problem and we get frustrated and we think like, oh, we just not cut out for it, but it's hard. A lot of the stuff is hard, and even when you improve, it's still hard. Continuing on, Ben Kyo also writes, other things I've brought up are the physical act of reading, visualizing, which you definitely touched on. Do you visualize them as black and white stones or something more formless and or colorless? I actually have an interesting little anecdote, because my friend said this was kind of when I was a little bit of a weaker player. He said, what I noticed was I heard that some professionals, when they read, they look somewhere else. They don't look at the board. And the more I play the game, sometimes I actually look away from what I'm playing, and that's easier somehow to read than actually looking at the board, which is counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you experience it. And with that in mind, like what I see when I look away and I start to read, I don't think I see black and white stones. I think I see relationships, because if imagine like you visualize two people fighting in your head. You don't really need to color them in any way to know which person is which. you just know like there's a relationship between them, and they're kind of have their positions like at different places from each other, and you know when one person's punching the other person, you know who's getting punched and who's doing the punching. At least that's kind of how I see it. But I think that like because they're colorless, sometimes you go back to an earlier area and you forget what color that stone was. Benkyo has more to say. Number 2, lack of faith in one's ability to improve at reading, their potential, believing they're doing it wrong, believing they're too old to develop the mental ability, etc. I faced this dilemma before as a sort of crossroads, at 3 Dan no less, in the past. And I've realized I have students and Discord members not only who also have these kinds of doubts, but also who've already given up on ever getting good at reading, even though what they're experiencing, including visualization, is the same as me. They need to be given hope. What worked for me was a big leap of faith combined with making myself read a lot more in each game, like 5 times as much. That's exactly what made my reading shoot up, and eventually all the doubts vanished. Hope you don't mind such a long comment. Excellent podcast, keep it up. I definitely don't mind such a long comment. It's really cool, especially when there's all this awesome stuff to talk about in the comment. And yeah, I just want to say, like, it may be hard for people. I want to just kind of reiterate what Benkyo is saying, that like it's hard. Go is hard, and a lot of the stuff, the reading stuff, it's easy for us to just convince ourselves not to do it. And it's kind of like life in that way. There's a lot of things we should be doing, but we don't do it because we don't want to. We don't believe in ourselves much. And just because you think it's hard doesn't mean that other people don't think it's hard. And just trying to get as much practice as you can. I think I'm going to take that advice, Benkyo, though, because like when I try to think about ways to improve my reading, I think about doing problems, but I don't really think about like reading more during a game, which is something I definitely should do. So thanks for your comment. Dark Madara Uchiha has written in again and says, I don't regard my reading ability as good, as I struggle with simple Sumego problems or compact life and death. However, stronger players have complimented me, and I think that is because I read a little and then use basic intuition. Example, if I'm at a difficult spot in the game, I would read out perhaps 3 variations or so, but only 4 stones ahead, and then see which one feels best at the moment. Typically, if it feels right at that point, it is in the right direction. Not 100% proof, but it seems to work. Keep up the good work. You have touched on something very, very crucial to Go, which is that even if you know a lot, you sometimes cannot be sure, and you have to go with what kind of feels right, even if you've read it. But the fact that you've read out 3 variations, I don't know. I actually don't think I read 3 variations very often, unless I do it so quickly. I just don't realize that like I have read more variations. But yes, I mean, like just trying to read out some variations during a game, it just gives you so much information. Thanks for writing in. And then Plixik writes, thanks for doing a reading episode. The analogies to reading were all great examples of how to think of it. Thank you again, Plixik, for the idea for that episode. And if you have an idea for an episode, don't be afraid to write in. I love ideas for episodes. I need ideas for episodes to keep this podcast going. And finally, we have Cantor's Set, who writes an excellent episode. I'll be implementing some of your suggestions. Cheers. And that's great to hear, to see some people kind of take encouragement from stuff I've been saying on the show and taking it as advice for their Go improvement. That's one of the things I definitely want this show to be, is a way to invigorate your Go. And with that, I'm going to move on to the question of the week, which is going to be, what is your favorite Go book? What Go books have helped you the most? And do you think Go books are even helpful? Let me know what you think wherever you're listening, whether it's Reddit, YouTube, Spotify. There is a way to comment on Spotify. If you're on Spotify, I know you guys are kind of a little quiet over there, but there is a way to participate in the show on Spotify. Or if you're listening somewhere where I don't even know, I know there's reviews on Apple Podcasts. But in any case, I would greatly appreciate any support. If you want to support me and the show, then you can like and subscribe and hit the bell on YouTube or follow on Spotify or wherever. Thanks so much for listening, and keep playing Go.